The rain had just started falling when Margaret Blackwood stepped out of her car, the cold Canadian air cutting through her coat like a reminder she deserved the pain. She didn't bring an umbrella. She never did when she came here. The grave sat quietly under a maple tree, its leaves scattered like broken memories. The name carved into the stone was her daughter's, and no amount of money, power, or influence had ever made those letters hurt less. People called Margaret a billionaire, a woman who owned half of Toronto's skyline, but in this place, she was only a mother who had failed to protect her child. She knelt slowly, her knees aching as if they, too, remembered the accident. Her fingers brushed the cold marble, and her breath trembled. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," she whispered, the same words she had repeated for 7 years. Meetings had been more important. Deals couldn't wait. She had told herself she'd make it up later. Later never came. That was when she heard it. A quiet, broken sob that didn't belong to her. Margaret turned and saw a man in a janitor's uniform standing a few steps away. He was holding a little girl in his arms, maybe 5 or 6 years old. The child's face was pressed into his chest, and her small hands clutched his shirt as if he were the only safe thing in the world. The man's shoulders shook as he cried silently, trying not to let the girl see. Margaret's first instinct was to step back. This was her private place. Her pain. But something about the scene held her still. The man gently placed the girl on a nearby bench and wiped his face, unaware he was being watched. "Daddy, is Mommy sleeping here?" the girl asked softly. The words pierced Margaret's chest like ice. The man nodded, forcing a smile that broke as soon as it formed. "Yes, sweetheart, she's resting, but she can still hear you." The little girl walked to the grave, not Margaret's daughter's, but the one beside it. She placed a small paper flower on the soil and whispered something Margaret couldn't hear. Then she turned and hugged the man again. Margaret's eyes burned. She had never seen grief like this before, not raw and honest like this, not without filters or press statements. She had lost her daughter, but this man had lost a wife, and this child had lost a mother before she could even remember her face. "I'm sorry," Margaret said before she realized she was speaking. The man looked up, startled, then nodded politely. "It's okay. We didn't mean to disturb anyone." "You didn't," Margaret replied. Her voice cracked. "My daughter is buried here too." The man's expression softened. "I clean this cemetery. I come early so my daughter can talk to her mom before school." Margaret swallowed hard. "Every day," he nodded. "It helps her believe her mother is still part of her life." Margaret felt something shift inside her, something painful but alive. She had visited once a month. Sometimes once every 2 months. Always alone. Always rushing back to a world that felt empty anyway. The rain began to fall harder. Margaret took off her coat and gently placed it around the little girl's shoulders. The child looked up, surprised, then smiled in a way that reminded Margaret painfully of her own daughter. "Thank you," the man said quietly. They stood together in silence as the rain washed over the graves, over the guilt, over the years of regret. In that moment, Margaret understood something she had avoided for a long time. Grief wasn't something to hide or schedule. It was something to share. A week later, Margaret returned. Then the next. She brought flowers, then toys, then stories. She listened to the little girl talk about school, about her drawings, about how her mommy used to sing. And slowly, without realizing it, Margaret's visits stopped being about the past and started becoming about the present. Months later, she paid for the man's training to become a ground supervisor, not as charity, but as respect. She helped with the child's education, not to fill a hole, but to build a future. And in return, they gave her something she thought was gone forever, a reason to come back, a reason to care, a reason to feel. One autumn afternoon, as maple leaves turned the cemetery golden, the little girl ran up to Margaret and hugged her tightly. "You're not lonely anymore," she said simply. Margaret smiled through tears, knowing the child was right. She still missed her daughter. That pain never left, but now, it lived beside something else, hope. And for the first time in years, the richest woman in the city felt truly alive, not because of what she owned, but because of who she had found when she finally allowed herself to stop being alone.